I've got something very, very awesome to show you guys today. Today we are playing, or at least previewing, Spires and Rangitaki. This is the next installment in the Spires End series, the third game in the series to be exact. If you guys haven't checked out my video on the original game, which is just called Spires End, definitely go check out that video because I go over sort of what I love about that game, this game, and like a lot of the similarities, the style of the game that it is, are really started from this game in and of itself. So definitely check out the video if you haven't already. However, Rangitaki does bring a lot of new mechanics, and sort of the way you play the game is quite a bit different. So obviously we'll be showing some of that off today. If you aren't familiar with the Spires End series, though, it started with Spires End, of course. There's the second game, Spires End Hildegard, and then this one is Spires End Rangitaki. The cool thing is that it seems like Gregory is going to be going through all of the characters of his original base game. So for example, if you look at some of the original cards in the base game, we can find Hildegard right here. So Hildegard, so this is actually from the base game, is one of the characters you could play, but she actually has her own game now, which is the second in the series. And now we have this game, which is centered around the story of Rangitaki. I think it's a really awesome way to sort of flesh out these characters, because really in the original game, you have this whole host of characters that you just don't really know anything about. You don't know their backstories, you don't know why they're going to the Spire, or anything of that sort. So the fact that Gregory is sort of fleshing these characters out and doing it in a really cool way by adding gameplay to the series, I think that's such a fantastic job. It's one of my favorite games, one of my favorite solo games. You can play it with two players. It's really great. And now we have Rangitaki. So if at the time of this recording, the Kickstarter just started for this game, so I'll include the link to the Kickstarter in the description below. But honestly, at the time of this recording, they funded very well already. They've already hit their first stretch goal of over 100,000, I believe. And yeah, super awesome. Big congrats to Gregory and the rest of the Spires End team. This is also co-written by Christian Thomas, who actually joined him for this third installment, and has illustrations by Diego Frias and Charlie Potter. I apologize if I mispronounced any of those names. So yeah, if you are familiar with the Spires End series, they are a series of choose your own adventure, but Gregory calls them choose your own path adventure games, where you have a big deck of cards that you go through from top to bottom, and they'll have different choices you have to make along the way, and there's usually some element of light combat involved, but really it is all about the story and figuring out which path you want to take, what risks you want to take, and ultimately can you make it to the end safe and sound, or at least as safe as can be. So you can see on the left side here we have our own deck of cards on the left. By the way, obvious disclaimer, this is a prototype copy, so everything you see here is subject to change. Things aren't obviously the final quality. So for example, these dice are actually just like generic dice with like the die faces taped onto them or glued onto them. So it's just obviously placeholder stuff. You can go to the Kickstarter to see sort of more final product images. Additionally, some of the stuff is a little bit beat up because this prototype was handled by multiple content creators. So big thanks to Gregory for at least giving me the chance to show this off and circulating one of the copies over to me. But yes, the deck of cards, this is only chapter 1 as well for Rangitaki that I have here. And you can sort of see, I'll put the original game sort of in comparison. It's pretty interesting seeing the size difference now. So Gregory decided to go for a much smaller form size. So this is actually the deck of 100 cards for the base game. But the main thing why that is because unlike the base game where it's really centered around about 100 cards for the full story, in this game there's going to be 3 full chapters. So there's going to be 3 full decks of 100 cards to go through, so it's a much longer experience, I would say, and also, especially with 3 chapters, it offers a lot more replayability, because obviously with Spires End, you ultimately usually only have 1 or 2 decisions you have to make when it comes to story branches or choice decisions in the story, so over time, you'll really just be able to go through one playthrough doing one choice and doing one playthrough the other choice ultimately. But there is still a lot of variability when it comes to sort of the dice mechanics and what happens when you actually make certain challenges, especially when it comes to Rangitaki. What I do love about Gregory's games with the Spires End series is he definitely doesn't make them all exactly alike. They all center around the same concept where you do run through a story from top to bottom using a deck of cards, but when it comes to mechanics, mechanics with the way you interact with the enemies, the way that you interact with just the tools at hand with dice and tokens and stuff like that. It's all completely different from the original game to Hildegard and to Rangitaki, so it's really, really awesome. So we are going to run through the prototype here. I won't be running through the whole prototype, obviously, because I don't want to spoil anything or spoil too much for you guys. I will run through sort of like the first few cards just to help set up the game, teach you sort of the flow of the game, in addition to the first combat encounter, just so you can sort of see how that plays out, because this is the first time that a full game board is actually being introduced into the Spire's End series. So if we look at the top-down view, we have this game board centered here. These are all the different places that enemies and yourself will be moving around during the encounters. On the top left, we have what are called severed heads, which will be essentially... I actually didn't get them in my first dry run, so to be honest, I don't really know what the Spire. I don't really know what the severed heads are used for, but the deck does ask us to set those aside. We also have on the right side here, we have Chapter 1 enemies, and we have at the bottom terrain for Chapter 1. So everything will be contained in its own deck when it comes from chapter to chapter, so it's really, really easy to sort of keep things self-contained and not accidentally mix cards up. You, of course, also have two different dice in the game. You have a D12 and a D20. I believe the final version of the D12 will have a couple of numbers missing, though, because specifically it does mention that when you use this D12, you use the D12 to actually roll and figure out where you're going to be landing, or where enemies are going to be randomly assigned on the board. It does say that the 2 and the 4 actually should be missing from the dice, just because enemies can't be placed there. So yeah, obviously placeholder D12, placeholder D10. That's all. I'm sure many of you are familiar with how those dice work. And then we have 3 to start with. You can potentially get a 4th one, but these are the health dice. They decided to do a really cool idea, which sort of take a book from the old Legend of Zelda games. So they all have sort of a full heart at 3 at 3. You can turn it to a half heart at 2, and then 1 heart, sort of a third heart at 1, and then you have an empty heart at 0, of course, and then you can potentially have your health dice disabled, so there'll be a little X on one of the sides as well. But it's really, really easy way. You can just turn it left and right to augment your health, depending on how many wounds you take. So in total, we have 9 wounds here. We also have these little discs on the bottom left. These are our action discs. There is going to be multiple colored discs that you will use to keep track of a multitude of stats and stuff like that. But ultimately, the orange ones are going to be mainly your action discs. So you spend these in a multitude of different ways. We can get into that a little bit later, but really a lot of the ways it's just to augment your dice, but especially in encounters, it's going to be what you use to fuel your different actions in the game. The prototype also does come with a bunch of these little orange cubes. These are very similar to the ones in the original Spire's End game. Very, very nifty, but those are just used easily for just general miscellaneous trackers you need to, such as tracking wounds on a character, on like an enemy, for example. All right, so we can just dive right in. So we're going to flip over the first card at the top of the deck. It says begin here, and we are going to start our adventure. So, to start, today I was rushed into the home of the seer Moakai. I've been here for hours now watching her work. She waves an unsteady 4-fingered hand over a cauldron filled with a dark, swirling liquid. It's ready, she says at last. Moakai opens her mouth and heaves. Her tongue curls out over her lower lip as her throat boulders upward. The seer reaches into her mouth and pulls out a small knife, followed by dripping cords of foul black ichor. She extends the knife to you. Finger or toe? So we have to pull cards. So pulling cards means you just simply pull the cards out and we just leave the deck as it is. So it says pull cards 83, 84, 85, and then we have a choice to make. So let's go to the back of the deck here. We have 83, 84, 85, and we're going to drop those here. So we have our rations. So rations, these are going to be, I don't know if this is labeled correctly. Again, prototype stuff, but the rations specifically are going to be just your character sheet. So this just is going to designate your character to move around the board. It also lists your starting action points at the bottom here, and then which can be augmented as the game goes on. There will be ways to make that number higher so you can hold more action points. And on the top left, we have what is our critical hit and our critical miss value. So it has 20 on the left side and then 5 on the right side. So when it comes to combat, if we roll a 20, then if we get a 20, that'll be a critical hit or a perfect roll. And then on the right side, if we get 5 or less, that is going to end up being a miss. But otherwise, anything else is considered a hit. So we can set that off to the side here. because we don't need that at the moment. We also have talents. So these are going to be used to keep track of our different stats. So this is where the different colored discs come from. In the prototype, we only have orange right now, but there's going to be blue and black to signify our stats for mental and critical hit bonuses, as well as physical bonuses. So we can use these bonuses. These are like permanent bonuses. So if we had one disc on physical, for any physical challenges, we could add +1 if we had one disc on there. And then we also have our event inventory below, so that'll be tracked. We just slide cards underneath and it'll show our inventories under that. So we can keep that off to the side as well. And then we have, last but not least, we have our travel satchel. So this will just keep track of a bunch of different things that we can get along the way. So breadfruit, for example, will get us HP. I believe Yuku can... Ooh, I don't remember off the top of my head, but Yuku and Aubergine are used for other things, like getting action points, for example. And then this card will specifically keep track of our item inventory. And then we can also have that off to the side as well. So we've pulled those cards out. Now we have to make a decision. We can either refuse, we can choose our finger, or we could choose our toe. Well, let's see. I did finger during my dry run, so let's do a toe this time. I don't want to refuse. We'll say our toe. So because it has a number 4 here, we are going to go search for number 4, and we're going to pull that card out. So we have 2 and 3 here, but because we're going straight to 4, the point of this game is you're never backtracking. So you're never having to search cards that you've previously passed, essentially. So when we do move on to a new card, in this case, we can actually just set 2 and 3 aside, because that's another timeline. We actually aren't able to use that anymore. So we're going to be getting number 4 here, and we're going to flip this card over, and we're going to put this card just in the discard pile, just to show that we've used it. We can just set it off to the side entirely, actually. And here is 4. So, hand shaking, you take the knife. You always suspected the transfer of dark sight would require a sacrifice. This was not what you had in mind. The pain that follows this act should be the least of your worries. Know that through this, you'll be able to commune with the dead on the eternal plains, Moakai explains. Outside, you hear screams. They rapidly intensify and grow closer. What must I do? We get to add Moakai's knife to your item inventory, which is just this card here specifically. So this, at the bottom here, it says Moakai's knife. It gives us +1 critical point. And then we move on to card number 5. This is not how I expected my day to go. So if we zoom out here, I apologize, it might have been a little blurry there. If we zoom out here, we can pull these cards. You can see on the side here. So we can take this card. This goes under our item inventory, so we can slide it under. We know that we have Moakai's knife, and we have +1 critical point. So I can actually take this disc and put it on our critical hit value. So when it comes to augmenting any critical challenges or anything like that, we can use that bonus, and that'll help us along the way, which is very, very nice. Critical points are also very, very useful for combat. So we're going to come back down here, and we're going to move on to card number 5. Head to the coast as fast as possible. Take a canoe, whatever you can find, and get off Makana. And if they've taken the beach, you ask? Then head to Trader's Trail up to the Tukutu gondola. Take it to Coral Cove. Now, enough stalling. You need to get this done. Moakai taps the altar with her hand impatiently. You remove your sandal and place your foot on it. You grab one of the candles on the altar and wedge it between your soon-to-be severed toe, separating it from the others. Confident now in your cutlery skills, you thrust the blade downward. Now we have our first challenge here. So again, there's 3 different challenges we can have. We can have physical, mortal, mental, and critical challenges. So this is a mental challenge. We have no bonuses at the moment. So it says there's a little 10 right here with a little hexagon, which signifies it's going to be using our D20 dice to roll that. And if you're familiar with any of these games like D&D or stuff like that, you obviously know what this means. With the 10 here, that means we have to roll a dice, and including our bonuses or subtracting any penalties, we have to have 10 or higher to actually succeed on this challenge. If we fail, we take a wound. So obviously, let's hope that this doesn't happen. So we're going to roll our dice. We got a 4. Now, this is where action discs do come in, because action discs are not only for interacting with combat and doing your different actions during encounters, but we can actually use those outside of encounters to augment our dice rolls. So I have 7 action discs. I could theoretically spend all 6 to bump this up to a 10 and succeed the challenge. The downside to that is your action points do not reset until you get into combat, until a full round of combat happens. So you can end up going into encounters with less than ideal actions to take. So we're obviously not going to do that. I'm just going to take the wound. We're not as strong as we thought we were. So I'm going to take my wound. So one of my dice here is going to go to the 2 because we take 1 wound, and that is going to be it. We have 8 wounds left, and we are saying so much blood for such a small toe, and we move on to card number 7. So we skip number 6 and we go straight to 7. The color drains from your face as you stare at your severed limbs, drawing a trail of blood along the floor. Moakai takes a blazing red stone from the cauldron fire, dips it into a mortar of black powder, and rubs it around. Remain still, she instructs before forcefully thrusting the searing stone into your wound, causing the flesh to sizzle. The pain is agonizing, but it swiftly dissipates. Moakai picks up your lost appendage and tosses it into the cauldron. She stirs the brew in long, sweeping motions while chanting soft, indiscernible words. Beyond the giant skull and hatched hut walls, the sounds of war intensify. She dips an aged wooden spoon into the warm, opaque liquid and extends it towards you. Drink it, she urges. We have a choice. We can go to card 9 and say yes, or we can say card 8 and say no. You know what? I'm going to say 9. And we are going to drink, it's only fair. Moakai made this awesome, nice stew for us using our own limbs. So we're going to drink the liquid. So we're going to go card 9. So we skip card 8 and we go to card 9. Parting ways. As the warm liquid glides down your throat, a peculiar sensation engulfs you. Suddenly, a dark screen of smoke rises into your vision, casting a shadow over the vibrant colors of the world. You can now communicate with Tutupo. He will provide ammunition for your blowgun and guidance for your escape. Ammunition? Tutupo? How? You grab the small dried head around your neck and look into its sunken face. Fed to you from his mouth as needed, Tutupo will summon your blowgun darts from the eternal plains. However, even with Tutupo's assistance, do not anticipate effortless kills. Seer Ravenna has used her dark craft to ensnare the people of Rookie Isle and turn them into ravenous animals. They are brutal, relentless, and consume the living in a desperate attempt to gain the dark sight for themselves. Tutupo's darts may not be enough to kill them, but it will slow them down. Goodbye, Rangitaki. She motions you to the door. If you lost your toe, we pull card 86. If we lost our finger, we pull card 87. So we lost our toe, so we're going to go search for card 86. And we have our first encounter actions card. So we're going to flip that over and we have our encounter actions. So these are essentially going to be a set of actions that we can take during encounters. Obviously, it's going to have the name of the action we can take, how many action discs it costs, how much damage if it inflicts damage, and how many targets it targets for the purpose of moving around on the game board. This specific card also gives us +1 physical point, so we can actually add a disc to our physical tracker. So we have a +1 to any physical challenges, which is very, very nice. So we have a bunch of stuff here and we can go over those later. So that'll be set off to the side as well. So then we say, I will listen to Tutupo, and we will move on to card 10. I also apologize if I'm totally mispronouncing these names. All right, we move on to card 10, Lost Makana. With a clear mind and renewed sense of urgency, you dash out the door and immediately recoil. Everything is in flames, sending pillars of black soot into the air. The raiders of Rookie are swift and brutal, mercilessly cutting down men, women, and children. It's chaos. The island of Makana is lost. Before you can escape, a towering Rookie emerges from the billowing smoke, blocking your path. We move on to card 11. I'm not sure I can do this. Well, you don't got a choice, Rangitaki. We gotta do what we gotta do. So, we have our first encounter card. So this is Nalu and the Rookie. So at the top here, it's going to signify where the enemy is placed and which card it is. So it says card number 12 is being placed in the center. So we flip over card number 12. It is going to be the Nalu. So this is going to be the rocky enemy that we are facing. And then we also have the R at the bottom. That's going to signify where we go. So we can place our image at the bottom here. I can actually zoom out now. The full board. There we go. We also have the amount of duration the battle is in. So this is 3 rounds of duration. It also gives you a word description of where to place the tokens and enemies, as well as yourself. We also have to pull 2 enemy cards, and we roll 1d12 for placement, and enemies cannot start on space 2 and 4. When an enemy is defeated, we return it to the enemy deck unless specifically told to discard it from play. And terrain, we have to pull 1 terrain card and roll 1d12 for placement there. So let's do the enemies first. So we're going to choose 2 enemies off the top of the deck. We have Tavita, which is... we have 2 people with crazy helmets, and then we have Woopu. So we're going to roll our d12. Again, we can't place them in spots 2 and 4, so we'll roll for Tavita first. We get a 3. That is where we are, so obviously we can't do that because 2 to 4 aren't eligible. So we're going to roll again. We get 8. So that is actually being taken up by Nalu, so we are going to have to roll again. Oh, that's rolled way too far. We got 12, so Tavita is going all the way up here. And then we have Woopu, who's going on 6. So Woopu is going to be placed over here. All right, and then also for the other setup we have to do is you have to find a terrain card. So we got the Cursed Bones Altar. So this presents us with a physical challenge that's also impassable and no line of sight, so we can't attack through it unless we use the lob action. Same goes for enemies. So we're going to roll our d12. Oops, and we got a 2. We can actually put the terrain here though, because it's not an enemy. So we can place terrain into 2. And that could actually help out very, very quickly because we can do a physical challenge for a challenge level of 10. And the requirement is we have to be adjacent, which we already start with. Any enemies adjacent to Cursed Bones get poison if we succeed. And we also pull card 80, so we could actually get something from this if we succeed the challenge. And if we succeed, we discard this card. And discarding essentially means it gets removed from the game. So that is going to be it. Special rules: if we have the Precious Time Lost event card, we do not. We actually lose 1 action point on round 1, and we discard card 8. Very, very interesting. So card 8, I actually don't know what card that would have been. I've not had to read that, but I'm guessing because we didn't end up refusing the stuff from the Elder Seer, we actually saved some time, so we actually didn't get penalized. So, and it says if we survive 3 rounds, then we reveal card 14. So this is just going to be trying to survive, trying to make it out alive. However, Nalu actually gives us a bonus. If we defeat Nalu, we can do a physical challenge of 9, and we get a pull card 13. So if we are able to kill Nalu, we could get something out of it. Additionally, we do have to worry about just simply not taking too many wounds because you don't heal in between encounters, which definitely makes combat very, very risky. So the way combat works is you always start. We have a bunch of different encounter actions we can take here. We can step for 1 action disc. We can move 1 space per point spent. We can also influence with 1 action point per, so we can add or subtract per any crit or miss. So we can influence we can influence critical hits and misses, and this also goes for actually enemy rolls as well, which is very, very important. So we can actually influence our enemies' rolls. We can heal 1 point per action disc spent, and we can also dodge 1 wound per 2 action discs spent, and we can also add a lob to our weapon, which lets us shoot over enemies as well as shoot over impassable terrain like this altar. And then using our dart shot costs 3, it does 1 damage to 1 target, but we could also augment that by spending 2 extra discs to do an extra poison effect at the end of the round for the enemy, and also potentially, and also get a crit bonus on top of that. And with a crit bonus meaning since we need a 20 to actually get a critical hit, with a +1 bonus, it means we just need a 19 on the dice to actually get that 20 to make it a critical, which essentially means we get an extra wound on the enemy that we target. So those are our different actions for now. We can, of course, get new actions as the game goes on or as the story goes on. We also have some different traits here. So if we look at Woopu here, he has the trait Cowardly. So the cowardly person also obviously doesn't want to fight. It retreats after 1 round and is removed from the playfield. However, we do have a punishment. If Woopu retreats, we lose 2 action points at the start of the next round, which could very, very much hinder us when we're trying to protect ourselves from the other 2 enemies. We also have Tavita, who has Squishy, and that means that I believe it takes another wound. If a character with a Squishy is wounded by an adjacent character, they will suffer 1 additional wound, and Squishy carries over to all future rounds. So it's going to be much easier to kill Tavita if we're actually right beside them. And then Nalu has bolsters. So Nalu is able to become more lethal at each round. So it attacks its attacks inflict additional wounds each round. So first round it'll do 1 wound, second round it'll do 2 wounds, third round it'll do 3 wounds, and so on and so forth. Now we only have to survive 3 rounds, but obviously that's still a lot of damage coming through, so we want to make sure that doesn't happen if possible. But we're sort of sandwiched here a little bit, so it's going to be very, very difficult. On the left side of the card, it shows how their targeting is as well. So Nalu here, for example, has a little... we can get that clearer. They're in the center here, and it allows them to attack pretty much anywhere around them. There's certain enemies that can attack only on their left, right, up, and down, or orthogonal directions. It also shows how far they can move, and then they also have their own critical hit and miss values. So on a 20, Nalu is going to be able to do a critical hit, and on a 1, Nalu will have a miss. And then at the very bottom of each enemy is how many action discs are replenished if we actually defeat them. And that's sort of where this game sort of becomes a little bit of a mini puzzle when it comes to combat, because you can do what is called action chaining or attack chaining. So you can actually end up killing an enemy, refunding some actions, which lets you fuel more attacks and potentially kill multiple things in a row. So it's really a puzzle to try to figure out what is the most efficient way of doing things, and hopefully the dice going along your way. Also, one thing I should mention is we don't have to, of course, naturally get these critical hit values on our cards. If we do get a natural 20, though, it does result in a perfect roll, so we actually get an action disc immediately back. So that's something to remember. Hopefully we can get that right off the bat. So we get to start. So we have a bunch of different actions here. I think it's going to be pretty difficult to kill Nalu unless we get pretty lucky. We only have 7 action discs. If I use 6 action discs to attack twice, assuming we hit both times, we're only going to take him down to 2 health unless I crit both of those times, which is not exactly easy to do. I will probably just stay here and wait for Cursed Bones. However, it is blocking my line of sight to Woopu. And the way there's a difference between like line of sight and line of attack. Like line of attack allows us to attack pretty much in any direction, assuming things aren't blocking it, of course. And then line of sight would be, so for example, if Tavita was behind Nalu, I wouldn't actually have line of sight on Tavita here. And I also wouldn't be able to attack with a dart unless I used the lob ability and shoot over Nalu. I could spend 1 action disc to start moving away, but I also don't want to get too far from the Cursed Bones because I do want to do that. I might just do this right away. I might just say screw applying poison to enemies, because Tavita doesn't need to move to actually hit me because she can actually lob stuff over, and Woopu would only need to move here to hit me. I mean, I guess I could wait. I think we're just going to attack Nalu. Yeah, I think we'll just attack Nalu and we'll see what happens. So we're going to spend 3 of our discs to do Dart Shot. So again, we always hit. However, unless we roll a 5 or less is when we miss. And if we happen to get 20, we get to do a critical hit. Because we have our critical hit bonus thanks to Mawakai's knife, I actually get that critical bonus on a 19 or 20. Okay, so my recording actually stopped. I apologize. I forgot to check. I hate the stupid half-an-hour recording thing. I was just talking about what we were going to be doing for this. I'm going to be staying and attacking. I did roll the dice, and I did get a natural 20. I swear to God, I did not put it on 20 when the camera cut off. 19 is actually going to be a critical because we have our critical value is 20. However, we do have a +1 critical point thanks to Mawakai's knife that we got earlier. So that 19 becomes a 20. That makes us do a critical hit, which means we do an extra wound. So we do 2 wounds to Nalu, which is fantastic. Now, it's not a natural 20, so we do not get an action point back, but that's still really, really great. We actually can potentially kill Nalu here if I get another critical hit. We have 4 action discs left. Do I want to go for it? I mean, I don't think I'm going to be doing anything else. If I use 3 discs to attack, I'll have 1 disc left. Our action discs only replenish at the end of a round, so it's after the enemies go as well. And what that means is, because we have actions like dodge and influence, which we can use on our opponent's turns, I wouldn't have enough actions to dodge. However, Nalu is only doing 1 wound in this first round, so it's not the worst. So I think I am going to do that. I'm gonna go YOLO. We're gonna use 3 action discs. I'm going to roll an attack again. We're gonna hopefully get a natural 20. That is a 3. Oh, that is actually a miss because we got 5 or less. And unfortunately, I can use an action disc to influence that, but we only have 1 left. We could only make it a 4, and that won't be enough to make it into a hit. So that is going to be it for me. So I have no more actions I could do. I have 1 action disc I could use to just like move, but I don't think that's worth it. So I think we're going to stay there. So the enemies are going to be going. So the enemies go in the least value on the corners of these points to the highest. So if we look at the different numbers, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Woopu's gonna go. Woopu is gonna move over with their 1, and they can shoot long range from 1 space away. So they're gonna hit me in this corner. So they have to roll as well. So it's a little bit tough to see their combat things, and I hope this gets changed in the final product because it's a little bit tough to see the critical value. It's right by the hand, but it says 12 and 1. So they get a critical on 12 or 1. Jesus. That's pretty insane. Hopefully I'm reading that right. That's actually pretty nuts. So we are going to take the punishment for this, unfortunately, because unfortunately this cursed bones is sort of blocking us from really attacking Woopu, which is going to be unfortunate because yeah, Woopu's going to leave after the first round. So it's going to be a 10. So luckily it's not a critical hit for them. So it's going to do 1 wound to us. So we go from 8 wounds to 7 wounds. And then Nalu is going to go, and he's going to hit us for 1 wound as well, unless he gets a 1. That is an 18, close to a critical, not a critical. So we get a wound, we go down to 6 wounds, and then Tavita can actually lob 2 spaces away, and they can move 2 spaces. They're gonna move here and lob their attack over Nalu, hitting us. And their critical is a 20 or 2, or a 20 critical or 2 critical miss. Oh, that was almost a 1. That would have been a miss. However, that is a 6. That still hits me, unfortunately. So I go down to 5 wounds. This is looking awful. We're doing really, really bad. All right, so that is it. So end of the round, Woopu is going to leave because Woopu does not want to fight. Woopu's going to leave. And we do lose 2 action points at the start of the next round. So we start with 5, unfortunately, which is not great. So it's back to our turn. We can use action points to heal in the middle of combat. However, we definitely want to kill Nalu. Nalu's already down to half health. We have 2 more rounds left. If we can kill Nalu, we'll be in pretty decent shape. I also do want to try to get this Cursed Bones as well, this altar. I don't believe it costs an action to interact with this. I could be wrong, but looking through the rulebook, I don't believe I saw anything like that. Again, prototype stuff, so not all the information could be there. Also, some of these cards are actually changed already. I should have mentioned that earlier. Some of them, Gregory did send me some of the revised cards in PDF form. A lot of it's mostly just down to wording, though. So I think we're going to just straight up attack Nalu. We're going to spend 3. I think I might actually add poison to this because for 2 extra. The reason for that is it'll spend all of our action points. However, we will do 1 wound for him, 1 wound to him guaranteed. If we happen to not get a crit and kill him outright, it's guaranteed the poison will kill him at the end of the round. We are going to take another 2 damage from him, but I mean, I don't really know what else I could do. Again, I could try to survive, but I really want whatever his item is. So yeah, we're going to spend all 5 action dice. We're going to use our dart, and we're going to augment that with poison to add poison to that. It also does, the poison also does give us a crit bonus, so now we are critting on an 18 or higher. That is a 10. That's still a hit, so it's going to be 1 wound, and then we'll just set a little wound counter in the top left corner here to signify that he has poison on him. So at the end of the round, he's going to take an additional wound. But that is completely it for us. I might as well just do this Cursed Bones now because they're not going to be getting close to it. So we're going to do this physical challenge here. There's no penalty if we fail. So if we succeed, we just need a 9 on the dice because we have +1 to our physical attribute, and the challenge level is 10. We just need a 9 on the dice to succeed. It's a 15, that is going to be a success. So because it's a success, we remove this card from play. We also get to pull card 80 out of the deck, and we get that card. Hopefully it's a card that can give us health or something. So we're going to pull card 80 out. We get Encased in Black Paste. The bones begin to spin like brittle branches in a cyclone. They break into smaller pieces and burst out in every direction. A sharp sliver of bone cuts into your cheek. Oh, we take 1 wound. Uh-oh, that actually is not great. We're down to 4 wounds. Tutapo expels an ashen mist from his mouth, and something slides out covered in black paste. You wipe off the foul goo, uncovering a new type of dart. We get to add piercing dart to our action inventory. So this actually goes underneath our action inventory, so our encounter action cards. This goes underneath, and just so we can see the stuff at the bottom. So we get Pierce Dart. This is a new augment. So before we augmented with poison, now we can augment our dart with piercing. So we can for an extra 2 cost, we can damage 2 adjacent enemies in a column in the line of attack. It must be combined with a dart attack, and dart attack with pierce does a total of 1 wound per target. So essentially for 5 cost, we could wound Nalu 1 and Tavita 1, whereas normally you'd have to do a separate attack against each of them. We could also spend 2 more to actually get bonus +2, which would actually make critting a lot easier. So that is a permanent item in our inventory now, and we get another augment, so that's really, really cool. So now we can actually have 2 different ways of augmenting our stuff. Now it's the enemy's turn. Nalu goes first. He's going to hit us for 2 because it's round 2, and he has bolster. So we go down to 2 wounds. Tavita is going to throw something over at us, and we go down to 1 wound, and that is it for the round. The end of the round, Nalu is going to die from poison, which means that we got to do a physical challenge of challenge level 9. In this case, we can roll 8 on the dice and succeed. We got a natural 1. My D&D rolls are coming to haunt me. Now, in this game, a natural 1 is always considered a failure. I believe a 20 is always considered a success, similar to other games. So even if we had ways to augment that, we could not augment that to success. We also don't have any action points anyways. So that is unfortunate. So we don't get to see what card 13 is. However, Nalu does die, which is a good thing. And he was a story card, so this means that typically he's just not going to come back. So we can just set him off to the side permanently. Now it's the start of our last round. It's round 3. Now we only have to survive to the end, but obviously, we got to try and kill everyone, right? So now we know that Tavita has squishy, which means that we do an extra wound when we are close to them. So we're going to actually use 1 wound. We're going to go 1 here. We're going to spend 1 action disc to move, and then we're going to spend 3 action discs to attack. We don't need to augment this because we know with 1 wound we just have to hit them, and they'll do 2 wounds, and that's all the health they have, and that'll succeed. I'll save the other just in case I happen to miss. I'll keep those, and we're gonna roll. That is a 9. That's going to be success, and that is going to do 2 wounds to Tavita. We get 2 action discs back, and that is going to be it for this. Now we just need to survive till the end of the round, so the round's still going, and we have 3. We actually get 2 action discs back from Tavita. I'm going to spend 5 action discs to heal on my turn, because we actually do get all of our action discs back at the end of the encounter as well. So we're going to go all the way back up to 6 wounds. And that'll be it. So end of the 3rd round, that is going to be encounter done for Nalu and the Rookie. So if we survive 3 rounds, we get to reveal card 14. So let's see what happens at the end of this fight. So you get rid of card 13, we have card 14. We have You Pick 'em. So for the moment, your enemies are incapacitated enough for you to make your escape. Your action points reset has increased to 8. So we get to slide this card underneath and to our event inventory. So now our action points are 8 total. So we actually reset and we get our action points back. We get a total of 8. Set those underneath the game board. Add survived Nalu to your event inventory, which is just this card. You look to the coast. It's the quickest way off the island, but it's sure to be overrun with Rookie raiders. You'll have to be fast and stealthy. To your right, a thick mist hugs the emerald peak of Mount Matuna. It's at its base. A narrow trail follows a steep incline to the cliffs on the opposite side. It's a dangerous climb, but if successful, it could provide an alternate route to the Tukutu gondola, which can take you safely off the island to Coral Cove. As you plan your route, you spy a breadfruit tree. Although risky, you have little in the way of provisions, so you attempt to climb the tree and pick one. We have a challenge level of 5, or in our case 4, because we have a +1. Easy roll. 14, that's going to be success, so we get 1 breadfruit. So on our little breadfruit tracker on the left here, we can add 1 breadfruit. So we can use that actually just to heal, which I'm actually going to eat that breadfruit right away to heal 1 to go up to 7 wounds, because we are not doing too well. Well, we're doing much better now, but we weren't doing very well. So we have 2 choices we can make here. We can go to the beach for card 15, and we can go to the cliffs for card 16 to continue our adventure. But that is going to be where I end this little adventure, because I obviously don't want to spoil a lot of chapter 1 for you guys, and that is going to be the general game loop. You're going to do different encounters, you're going to make different choices, you're going to hopefully not roll as bad as I did on some of this stuff, and ultimately you're going to make it to the end of the chapter and move on to the next chapter. This game does have checkpoints in between chapters, so if you do happen to fail, you are able to start, just sort of reset at the base chapter that you started in with whatever gear you came into that chapter with, and you can continue along the way. But that is going to do it for this little preview. Thank you so much for joining me, and big again thanks to Gregory and the Spire's End team for actually letting me check out this prototype and sharing it with you guys. Again, I just only want to share things that I enjoy myself, and I am a big fan of the first Spire's End. I do recommend, if you are going to back this game, I do recommend at least picking up the first base game. You don't have to get Hildegard, but I do think getting the first game will be a nice introduction. Plus, the game plays quite a bit differently than this game. I do really like this game board that they have here, and I do like it's a little bit more puzzly, where the combat encounters are not super intensive and they're not really drawn out. It's really more of a puzzle in how you approach it, with the tools that you have, with the whatever extra stat bonuses you've gathered along the way, and trying to figure out what the most efficient way of doing things is while minimizing the damage to yourself. So there's a decent amount of decision making. This game is really about the narrative, though. It's really about moving through a story. So the combat stuff is very light, which I think is really great. There's still enough game in here to actually make you engaged and make you feel like you're making meaningful decisions, but at the same time, it's not like a super big epic campaign game where you are trying to learn 1,000,001 different mechanics and trying to remember those on your own. So I think this is a really fantastic addition. Again, just continuing as well with the fantastic art. I absolutely love the art in this game, and all the Spires in the games, to be honest. I do recommend also checking out Spires and Hildegard. I personally haven't played that one, but I've only heard just good things about the Spires and Hildegard game. And that one, I would say, is a little bit more on the lighthearted side of things in terms of fleshing out that character's backstory. This one is definitely, obviously, you can tell from the war-torn descriptions, it's definitely a little bit more on the darker side, and the original Spires End obviously is much more gloomy and dark as well. So you can definitely sort of pick your poison when it comes to that stuff. But that's going to do it. Again, I have the link to the campaign in the description below. I will say as well, big props to Gregory for actually making a very good Kickstarter. This game doesn't have a ton of stretch goals. It doesn't have a ton of things to fill into that FOMO. They really are treating you respectfully with this Kickstarter, which a lot of board games can't say. So I definitely do recommend, if this is something that interests you, I definitely recommend backing it. And check out the other Spire's End games. That's all I can say. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.